Okay, it says we are live. When it says we're live, we're live.
Yeah.
I'm not going to doubt it anymore.
No,
Okay.
definitely.
Right.
Hello, Mr. Larry. We are live, and we finally got our guest, Mr. Larry. We had to
Yay.
fly him in
From Highland Ranch.
from Highlands Ranch to Parker, Colorado, and so he finally made it in. Last week we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but here we are. And we are live. And Mr. Larry, did you want to put on your sunglasses so you go incognito so nobody knows who you are? All right. This is Mr. Larry. If you see him on the streets, don't ask him any questions. Just kidding about the sunglasses. But in all seriousness, Larry, thank you very much for hopping on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. This is, I think, our fourth live YouTube live.
So that sounds about right.
And you are the first guest. And the reason why you're the first guest, no surprises, no prizes or anything. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a prize at the end if you stay tuned. But the reason why you're the first guest is because, as I shared on Instagram, you really, I view you as my entrepreneurial mentor. I mean, growing up, just to share with the room, I had paper routes and stuff like that. But I always thought that working for a company was you made it until I met Mr. Larry 9 years ago. And I appreciate that. So Lori doesn't know everything about you because, you know, what you and I text all the time about is kind of like we go into detail. So she'll be asking a lot of questions. But I just want to like jump into we don't need to go back way back. But how did you know about entrepreneurship? Is it just something you stumbled upon, or like did you have a mentor, or what really jumped?
Well, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My father, his brothers, his father. So I was always around it. Never thought much about it, but I think it's somehow could be in my blood in a way. Growing up, yes, I did have a paper route. I sold candy in school. And things like that. But then I got the real good jobs, like Chuck E. Cheese and short order cook in a restaurant,
Congratulations. That's
and then in a junkyard. I worked in a junkyard once. I mean, and I was just floundered for a while. And then, my father used to have, back in the 70s, there were no cell phones. They were what they call the IMTS phones. They were these monster boxes that would go in the cars. And he always had one of these phones in his car. And it was rotary dial. You called a mobile operator. And he always got new cars. Whenever he got a new car, the phone had to come out and then go back into the new car. So he would pay to have that done. And eventually, and I always used to tinker with stuff like, take apart phones, take apart mopeds and motorcycles. So I used to tell him, let me just take the phone out of the car for you. And then you can just have them put it in. So you'll save the money for the removal. Because it's just so easy pulling the wires out to me, because I used to always put car radios in. So one day I was dropping him off at the phone store to pick up his car. And one of the managers asked us, who keeps taking the phone out of his car? Because they used to take it out. Now they're just putting it in. So I said, me, I'm just taking it. The guy looks at me and goes, you want a job? And I'm like, okay. That started everything. That was the starting point.
And how old were you at the time?
Oh, probably about 22, maybe 23. So, I'm 27 now. So it was 4 years ago. No,
you look great, man. You look great.
It was a long time ago. Yeah. So what happened was I really, really loved doing this. This was when cell phones were in their infancy. We used to build the bag phones. We used to, the phones that we were putting in cars at the time went to very wealthy individuals because that's all who could afford it. And what I was doing was the removal, the R&R, we used to call it, removal and reinstallation of the phones. Whenever somebody got a new car, I'd put the phones in, I'd take it out of the old car, and so on. I was doing it so well that I started gaining, and this was the company I worked for. It was a public company. They were on the pink sheet. So they were a pretty big company. And I started getting side work because some of the people I was doing work for was like, I'm paying your boss $275 for you to take a phone out of the car and put it back in, and you're making $10 an hour. He's probably paying you $30. He goes, why don't I just give you $150? We both win. I'm like, okay.
And you're 22 and you're 22 years old and you're like thinking I struck it rich.
Struck it rich. I started working full time for this company, and I was doing like 2 or 3. I was doing at least 1 a day side job, and then eventually 2 a day, and then eventually it was getting to the point where it's like, okay, I've got to do this on my own because my job is becoming a nuisance. So I went into my boss's office, and I loved the company, and I sat down because I was going to give him my 2 weeks notice. So he said to me, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah. And he opens up his drawer and he pulls out a stack of business cards like this in a rubber band. And he said, you know what this is? And I said, stack of business cards. And he goes, this is what I call my has-been file. And I said, well, what's a has-been file? And he said, these are all the people that tried to go into business for themselves that didn't make it. And I keep adding to this pile, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And he said, I really suggest that you don't do it. I'll give you more money. I'll do whatever it takes, And I said, it's not about the money. I said, I really want to do this on my own. It's not the money. It's not the money. I really enjoy working here, but I really want to do this on my own. After a good couple minutes of him trying to talk me out of it, he said, okay, there's nothing I could do. I stood up, I turned around, I walked to the door. He called my name, Larry. I turned around, I said, yes. And he goes, if I didn't do what you're doing right now, I wouldn't be sitting where I am. So it was a really cool thing to hear. He knew that I was doing the right thing. He was trying to keep me for his own benefit. And he finally admitted that was the right thing to do. And at the time, cell phones and stuff were in such an infancy. It was a small group of people that, companies, as soon as they heard that I was leaving the company, everybody wanted me. And the money that was offered to me at the time was incredible. At the time, if you were making your age, you were doing well. So, that was the guide at the time. And I was getting offered twice my age. And I was like, it's not the money. It's not the money. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm flattered. And that was really the start of my entrepreneurship.
So what did you do after that then, Larry? How did you what was the next business you did totally for yourself?
Well, the company that I worked for was a cell phone company, and I was doing these installations on my own and everything. Then I went back to the cell phone company because I wanted to do business with them, because at the time you were getting a commission for signing up subscribers. So I said, let me go back to my boss, who's no longer my boss now, who I was intimidated by because he was my boss. And I went to him and I said, I won't say his name just in case he's listening. I don't think he is. He's maybe dead for all I know. But
he's here.
So he said, I said to him, I really want to do business with you. Can you offer me a commission plus residuals? The residuals was a percentage of the customer's phone bill for a certain period of time. And he told me, I can't do that. It's an accounting nightmare. And at that point, I said, okay, if you can't, somebody else will. And at that point is when it clicked and it hit me. And it said, he was my boss. Now he's just somebody that I'm trying to do business with. And I actually said no to him, and I wasn't scared, and I was like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah. Because a light bulb went off for you and you're like, wait, I could do that. I don't need anybody else to do it for me, which is kind of interesting because he was your employer and he tried to handcuff you kind of indirectly. And then as you made the choice, he's like, you know what? Good move, which is kind of weird because I think that's what a lot of people, especially listeners or viewers right now, most of them are resellers, but most of them are kind of maybe part-time resellers that still have a job. So how, as you know, Laurie and I are full-time resellers. You're a full-time reseller. And that means that you're generating enough, call it income, to live off of. Now you have other passive income sources such as real estate. We could get into that, but I think the hardest part is to make that break where you're like, I could do this on my own. Nobody's above me anymore. And you said that, you just kind of you're like, this guy's my equal now. And you were 22 years old.
Yep, exactly. And I was like, that's when I was like, wow, I'm no longer afraid of this person or afraid of getting fired or reprimanded. Because now it's either you want to do business with me or you don't. And if you don't, I don't care. I'll just move on. So, and that's what I did,
After that, did you, Larry? Well, I'm sorry to cut in, but after that, did you go into? I think Dave mentioned, if I recall, you started going to beepers, which is something that is like beeper. What's that? So some people might be saying that.
So what happened was the cell phone company that I worked for at the time, there was only 2 cell phone carriers. It was I think it was Bell Atlantic and Metro One. This was way back. And what the company I did that I was working for, they would buy the airtime in bulk from these 2 carriers, and then they would resell them. So they would be responsible for bad debt, but they would do the billing. So to the customer, and they would make the markup. They would buy thousands of phone numbers from the cell phone carriers. So that's how they made money. So when I went off on my own, beepers were the big thing. No one could afford cell phones, so paging was, doctors, lawyers, and drug dealers at the time. That's all that had them. That's what they were saying. So we all had beepers. I had a beeper. So I started thinking, I'm like, wait a second, maybe I can do the same thing with a beeper that the other company I worked for was doing with cell phone airtime. It's a little bit simpler. I'll call the beeper company. We call them pagers, more professional. I'd call PageNet or Tri-State Radio. There was a whole bunch of carriers. So I called the carriers. I'm like, hey, I want to be a reseller. I want to buy the airtime in bulk, and I'm going to resell it. So, you'll give me a discount because I'm buying thousands or hundreds. And every single one said no. They all said no. They said, nope, we're regulated by the FCC. You have to be bonded. They give me all kinds of excuses. And I'm like, I know this will work. But they all said no. So what I did was I called PageNet and I set up a fake office in a friend's building. He had an installation company. And I pretended that I was working for this installation company. I set the whole thing up, and I said, "Yeah, we need 100 beepers." So
just real quick, the disclaimer is no, don't worry about it. The disclaimer for our viewers is you could only do this in New Jersey. Okay,
and maybe that many years ago.
And but what you said is you kind of had to work around, and you have to establish yourself as I
wasn't taking no for an answer, and I made up a whole thing, and I duped this company into thinking that I was just a big company. They finally caught me, and when they caught me, they said they were so impressed at the way I did it, they made me a reseller. Wow. And I was one of the largest resellers in the tri-state area at one time, one of the top, and I was very, it was great. It was a great run. And then paging became obsolete, but at the time, I had done other things, and I was accumulating, I was buying real estate to work out of and stuff like that. And back then, that was like, if I met you back then, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this guy's like, I don't even think high tech was a word back then. I don't know what we called it, but it was just like, this guy he's so smart. Like, it's not like you're a scientist where you're like, hey, I'm going to create this. You just had a business mindset when it came to, I'm going to capitalize on an industry that's taking off. How do I get in there? And which is interesting because a lot of the viewers now, and I'm going to bring Angie, one of our viewers, says he adapted, and that's very true because you made it happen. You saw and felt the opportunity, and you made it happen. Now, a lot of our viewers are resellers, and the reselling industry, as you know, is going to don't quote me on this, but like triple over the next 6 years. I read an article. So a lot of resellers are saying, hey, how do I capitalize on that? Do I just stay where I am or what? But going back to you with the beepers, you saw that this industry was about to take off and you just got in and you did very well. You told me your numbers. You don't need to share them on here, but back then those numbers were just like sick. And what you did with that is you leveraged and kind of diversified into other passive income sources. And it was really, honestly, it was never about the money. Never. I don't think I've ever really, do I want to make money? Yeah. Do I, but it never did anything for the money. It was just about taking something from nothing and making it work, making something out of nothing. That is in itself is such a great satisfaction.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, then how did you get involved in eBay?
Well, it's funny because a couple of years ago, I got a message from eBay saying, congratulations on your 20-year anniversary. And I'm like, wow, I set up my account 20 years ago. And then I looked to see when eBay first started, and it was like 2 years before. So I actually had an account when eBay was only like 2 years old. I got started. It was I can't remember. It was one of two things. I think one time I was in Home Depot with my brother-in-law, and we needed to get an instant hot water heater for one of our buildings for the bathroom. So I went to Home Depot and I said, I just want the least expensive one. They pulled one off the shelf and they said, well, these are marked down to $5. Now these things are normally $150. And I mean, they're like, it's a mistake, or they just want to get rid of them. And I said to the guy, how many do you have? And I think at the time he might have said 20.
And how long ago was this?
Oh gosh, this had to be at least I probably had my eBay account open for maybe a year before I really did anything with it. Maybe it was 20 years ago.
Okay. Well, you essentially were doing retail arbitrage, online retail. Well, not online, but you were buying, and so that's what a lot of people do here. So how many of those items did you purchase in resale?
We bought all 20 and just sold them all, and that was easy. And then I would dabble with like NFL tickets. I'd buy them because back then there was no StubHub, there was no SeatGeek or anything like that. So I would sell them. I would sell those. And then when I was doing the beepers and everything too, that was before that. At some point, I still had the cell phone business, and I was trying to do accessories on there. And then the account just went dormant. I wasn't making a living, using it to make a living, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I was just dabbling in it. It's just kind of cool. And it sat dormant for years and years, before I really started relying on it to make a living again with it.
See, what's interesting is we all encounter people like you, that either like you look at them and say, how did they do it? And it's either, it's kind of like in your blood. Like it's just that, like you just said, you don't do it for the money. You do it because it's a challenge, it's fun, and it's just an inspiration. It's like it's enjoyable. Angie says, Larry, I'm going to be the next big shot like Dave and Laurie. Okay. Yeah. No. Angie is she made a post on Instagram yesterday. She goes to estate sales. Oh, Larry, you would love this. I'm going to give you Angie's Instagram. I don't know how to drop that, but if you follow Dayton Valley Deals on Instagram, she went to an estate sale over the weekend, and she didn't know what she had. It was like a vintage. It was a big round screen. And she's like, anybody have any idea? And I'm like, that looks like an oscilloscope. Remember when I used to get them? They look
from the old submarines.
And she must have one that is close to 100 years old. Not all the knobs missing and whatnot. And she was just like, any idea what this is? And I was like, well, since you and Larry and I, we used to go to auctions and buy all this kind of like outdated equipment, and it's like, oh, it looks fancy. Like, so she got an oscilloscope. Now I don't know how much it is, but it looked really cool. They have the green glass. It looks like it belongs in a submarine. Yes, it looks like some kind of radar thing, right? But also Angie, just to let you know, Larry, like she appears on other YouTube lives, and she enjoys it. It's all reselling related, but the fun part is it's like resellers hop in and ask reselling questions, and you learn and stuff like that. Yeah. And just to share with the viewers, it's like when Laurie and I moved out to Colorado 9 years ago, and we had to get out of New Jersey, not because we were being chased by anybody. So it was just because we needed a change.
Yeah.
And
we were done with, we just needed a breath of fresh air, and Colorado seemed to provide that.
Yeah.
So we moved out here not knowing a soul.
Right.
Pretty much, except for Mr. Larry.
Right. Yeah.
That we actually kind of communicated online before we actually came out here for the first time. We came out here to look for houses, and he helped us with that. And we've never looked back. And somewhere along the line, you and you and him.
Yep. Both of us.
Hooked up on the eBay thing.
Yeah. It was interesting because when we moved out here, Larry had helped us find a house and was very instrumental. Laurie was talking to Larry's wife about living out here, and we were really excited. And it turned out it was like Larry, who I did not know from New Jersey, was out here.
From New Jersey.
From New Jersey.
Yeah. And he had moved, I think he had moved 5 years maybe before we moved here, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And so we really connected, and we had this kind of New Jersey connection. But I remember asking Mr. Larry, I said, Mr. Larry, what do you do? And he goes, you really didn't know how to answer it because I don't think the word reseller was being used
like it is
too wide.
Yeah.
And even when I started reselling it was like, how do I describe what we do? We just sell junk on eBay. But you had formed a lot of strong networking sources to get your inventory, and Larry was pretty successful selling on eBay back then, and he and I just shared, we started selling, I think it was locally just on Craigslist. Remember, like you were like, hey, I could get this, I could come across the big stuff. What was it?
We met somebody down in Castle Rock for in the rain at a Home Depot and sold them these roofing things.
Okay.
Remember that? Yeah, we were doing that. We were driving around the rims and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, we would just. I think you would come across larger items that you couldn't really sell on eBay. You're like, hey, you want to handle this locally, and I'm like, yeah, I love it. I want to come across some spare change, go out to dinner. You know me and food. I love food. But you're right. So you and I started doing this kind of local. This is before Facebook Marketplace and all. This was all Craigslist. And I remember remember that floor burnisher thing? Remember that?
Yep. The cleaner, we sold it to some gymnasium or something.
Yeah.
Remember, we delivered it?
That was a professional vacuum cleaner we sold.
Yeah.
But we also sold something called a burnisher. It was the
propane thing.
Yeah.
That's right.
This guy came to our house and with $1,700 and took it. And I remember I was like shaking. I said, "Oh my gosh, Larry, I've never had this much cash in my hands ever, except for one time I went out to Vegas, but we won't talk about that." But anyway, but it was pretty wild. I think, and then you and I started dabbling in these auctions, and
we tried the storage auctions one time.
I remember that. I think I went with you. I went there with you one time.
Yeah, Dave and I, we spent the whole day following the auctioneer from different place to place, and it was garbage. I don't know how people do
storage
that.
Wars.
It was like Storage Wars, and that didn't do anything for me. But I shared a couple of weeks ago on here that you and I went to this one auction where it was all online bidding ahead of time, and you and I would look up the price, and I'm like, "Hey, what's our max bid? Remember? Hey, what's the max bid?" Yeah. And I was I was throwing in the bids, and we won something, and we went to go pick it up, and it was £1,000, and we got into trouble because we had to remove it.
Yeah, part of the thing is if you win the item, this warehouse had to be cleaned out. It was a bankruptcy or something. If you left anything, you would get penalized money. You'd have to pay if you left it there. So it had to go. We had no choice.
Yes, and we were able to finagle and just ask somebody there, "Hey, can you take it?" So, but that's when I stumbled upon the Goodwill bins, the picking, like the outlets, and I remember you came once or twice with me there. And would you like to make the face you made when you would walk in? And it was something like this.
I don't know how you do it. How do you do it?
You still shake your head after 8 years. You're like, oh, you're just repulsed. And I'm like, this is fun.
So much fun. He goes every day practically.
It's so funny when you tell me the story about when there's a pair of shoes in there that are worth something. You get one, somebody else gets one, and you look at each other and you're like, okay, now what do we do? Right? Well, you have to negotiate to get the shoe.
Well, there is a protocol. There's
bin etiquette.
Bin etiquette. And speaking of bins, Kelly, hello,
hey,
Kelly. I have seen that bin's face on many people. You mean this one?
I felt like I needed to go into a decontamination chamber when I left that there.
Yeah, exactly. I always kid around. I think back in 2013 or 14 when I first started going there, I came down with COVID number 1.
That's where it all started.
That's where it all started. I started going to the bins, Kelly, back then. And then a month later, for Larry, one of Larry's milestone birthdays, we went out to LA to see the Eagles in concert. The band, not the football team. We went at the Forum, and it was a great time.
And we stayed at the Hotel California.
Yes, we did. Yeah, it was a great time. That night, I started coming down with chills. I was so desperate during the concert. I went to first aid and I said, "Do you have any Advil or anything?" I was miserable, right? And after the concert, I'm like, guys, I have to go back to the hotel, and I just sat in a bathtub.
You were a mess.
I was shivering. Yeah. So it was
the poor people that sat next to you in the plane. Who knows if they're still alive?
I hope. But same thing. Like, I got onto Southwest, and as we're entering the plane, I'm like, "Do you guys have any blankets?" And they're like, "No, we don't have blankets here." But
is that when I lost my carry-on?
Yeah, we had on the way out there. We had many.
We had the drink coupons that you got on Craigslist.
Yes, I did. I was so into Craigslist. I went on to Craigslist, and this guy who must have been a Southwest employee was selling like free drink coupons for like $2 a piece, and I bought like 20 of them. And we, the three of us that went out, we had so many on the plane that Larry lost his carry-on. We were the last ones getting off the plane. You forget.
Who loses their carry-on?
No, I did.
Mr. Larry. It was great. It was hilarious. It was a fun weekend. But yes, so the bins. I'm immune to any virus because I contacted it
from the bins
initially.
Version 1. Yeah, but the bins are fun. It's a great way to get cheap. See, that's the thing, Larry. Like, your reselling business model is you pay for your higher end equipment. And you're willing to, and you have this type of relationship with your sellers that you're going to buy things for $400, $500, $600 or more, and triple the sale. And that's a part that a lot of resellers don't get to because they don't have that capital. But because you entered, you jumped, you leapfrogged a lot of resellers to get to that level, as opposed to many like me who started off poor, and I'm just kidding, but started off kind of like, I don't know if reselling's for me, but
so you didn't want to invest that capital,
right? But if I could get inexpensive, cheap inventory and buy it for $1, sell it for 40, I'm into that.
Right. See, like that's your business model. My business model, I have a lot less items, but my average sale price is higher. One of the things that I remember for the viewers that are watching, a lot of people want to know, like, well, how can I get stuff, and how can I get to that point, or how can I just easily get merchandise to sell? And one of the things that I noticed is when Laurie, Dave, and I would go to the eBay Open every year in Vegas when they had it. Hopefully they'll have it again. We've learned so much from the other resellers that are there. That's where you get the best information and the things that they do and how they do it. Somebody just buys Apple computers and just sell parts. This one kid started with one pool supply store in Florida. He's got warehouses all over the country just for shipping logistics, and is doing something like $20 million a month. Young kid. His parents were old school. They were reluctant to do it. He started doing it on the side. Stuff like that. There's also people that are, you can buy stuff on, I don't know if anybody ever bought anything on Alibaba. Dave and I dabbled with it. I don't know. The things that we just didn't work, but I know people that do that. If you're,
some people are like successful like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you go on Alibaba, I know people are saying, well, I'm not going to buy. I don't trust these people. Alibaba has a thing called trade assurance. And what it is, it's basically an escrow account, and it works. And if they charge a certain percent of the sale. So let's just say you want to buy 1,000 of an item. The money's not released until you get it. And until you verify it is what it is. Now, it's a lot of counterfeit stuff there, so you got to be careful. We did something with Kingston hard flash drives many years ago, and we lost. It was a disaster. They were all counterfeit. We were like, this is too good to be true. We were buying them for $15 and selling for $150. But I do know people that are buying things from Alibaba in bulk, and they're reselling them, and they're doing well.
Right.
Yeah. Look at this, Larry. Remember this?
The old pop sockets, the counterfeit pop sockets.
Yeah, this is how this is how knockoff they are. Look. Oh, it's staying down.
The real ones don't do that?
No.
No. Well, this has been on my phone for almost 2 years. There we go.
Oh,
See,
funny.
it pops back up.
It's supposed
But
to?
no, it's not supposed to. It's supposed to stay down, but it never stays down.
Oh.
We almost got our eBay accounts shut down or something at one point.
Yes. Yeah. Larry and I purchased maybe, I don't even know how much. I think it was like $600 or $700 worth of pop sockets.
They were in the thousands that we bought, thousands of items.
We still have them, don't we?
Somewhere.
Yeah, almost 1,500 or 2,000 of those.
Yeah,
and the price per it came with this. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'll take that. I mean, even though it's not an official pop.
We're not promoting selling counterfeit items. That's
not at all. Yeah. But sometimes they work good enough. So we purchased like almost 2,000 of those, and the cost was almost 20 cents an item. And we were selling them. I sold it on another account. We were selling them for like $6. And when you were like, oh my goodness, this is going to take off. And sure enough, a month later, we get flagged. We're like, oh, you're selling knockoff items.
And we didn't know they were knockoffs. I didn't know there was, we didn't do it intentionally.
No.
But are you allowed to sell them as long as you don't make it sound like you're not using the pop socket name? You have to somehow turn it.
No, pop socket matter. There's like pop socket monitors eBay, Gibson monitors eBay. There are so many manufacturers that monitor eBay just to see if their items are being counterfeited and sold on eBay.
Right.
That's
because isn't there is a difference between counterfeit and brand name? I mean, generic.
Well,
should I say?
I don't know, but
counterfeit is you're passing it off as that brand, where a generic would be not doing that.
Yeah, but I think they have the copyright on it, or the whatever it is on it.
Yeah.
And those copyrights, I think they last for a certain amount of years. After that, anybody can make it. So it's only good for
But bottom line is we tried, and I know a lot of people do that on Amazon. They have private label, like they have their own item or product.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
That's one way to do it.
The thing is with Amazon, though, I think you need a UPC code. So if your item doesn't have a UPC code, you really can't sell it on there.
Right.
You have to either buy it or it already has to have one.
Yeah.
Right.
But
just like Angie said, he adapted. I mean, and we adapted. We tried. We at the time we were like, hey, can we just change the title to Socket Pop, Socket Rocket Pop? I mean, there's no doubt, because I was like, they are going after the title because it sounded too much like Pop Socket, so I made it like Poppy Socket.
Oh my gosh!
I was trying everything, and it was it did not work out well. So you have to adapt.
Yeah,
and then we had more than one account.
Well, that's I mean, I don't know if you're allowed or you're supposed to, or I don't want to encourage it, but always having more than one eBay account, just for safety, for backup, just in case, things happen that aren't intentional, but that really screw you up.
They're not that specific, and they're not worried about that anymore as much as they used to be.
They used to really be. Yeah.
Speaking of that. My question, I just had a question, like, since you've been on eBay for so long, how do you manage the ups and downs of eBay, like over time? Because it's probably not all great all the time, right? Or is it?
Oh no.
Well, the hardest part is, like, Dave and I talk about this all the time. You could sell 1,000 items and get one return for $10, and it ruins your day. A return request, because their return. I mean, I should not assume. It just that's the thing that really bothers me the most.
Really, the returns
is the returns that are I don't want to say fraudulent, but are just
borderline.
Not necessary. I don't know. I don't know what to say. But so how do I deal with the ups and downs? Meaning like
the ebbs and flows of the business. Like sometimes things are gangbusters, and sometimes things are like, where did everybody go?
Right.
Did eBay shut down?
I used to say to myself, like, every summer, I've got to start keeping track of my sales during different times of the year, because there's always, in the summers, there's always this period where there's nothing, and I just don't know the exact dates. And I'm like, we should always, I tell my wife, we should just go away for those 6 weeks because nothing happens anyway. How do I deal with it? I don't know. There's some, like, lately, there's been times where it's like, is eBay open? There's just like, I'd go, I go days without a sale, and I usually sell a couple things a day at least. You know,
Right.
Larry, I think you texted me last week in the morning. You said, I have 3 returns, a disputed case, and 1 sale. In other words, you woke up and the day started off negative.
Yeah,
That wasn't a good sale day.
Yeah, and then when you don't want to think about it, you're like, oh my gosh, if I haven't had a return in weeks, guess what's going to happen now? I just jinxed it. You almost don't even want to think about it, because when you think about it, it happens. Yeah.
And so, just to share with the room, Larry does almost a similar type of activity we do in terms of call it gross eBay sales. We do volume, he does not. So that goes back to, he'd rather sell higher priced items and pay more for them and not have the volume. But Larry's returns, like we always kid around, it's like getting a bowling ball to the stomach, like on his end, because his return could be like $500.
Yes, because my average
regularly, on a regular basis, not just every once in a while.
But you know what though, I gotta say, like there were obvious times where I've had the items returned and the customer replaced the electronics inside. It was so obvious. I'm in the electronic business. I've been in all my life. I'm not stupid. I test out these things, and I gotta be honest with you. eBay has really stood behind me on, I would say, almost 100% of issues like that. Every single time they just they say they love me. You're a good seller. We're going to make a good on it. And I feel bad. I'm like, why should you, when this person really screwed you? I mean, they've got algorithms and they know.
And they can afford it.
Yeah.
They you know what they do, Larry? They bring up your account and bells and whistles go off.
Yeah.
And a gold plate is around your face and say, give this guy everything. So along those lines, how appropriate. But Angie says, Larry, do you sell on other platforms?
Let's see. I actually tried Amazon for a while. I would take the same item. I would take the particular item I'd list on eBay and Amazon. And then as soon as it sold on one or the other, I'd remove it.
Correct.
I had 20 items. And I actually, people seem to pay more on Amazon because they trust it. They think it's coming from Amazon. They don't realize it's a third-party seller, a lot of people. And I priced it the same pretty much as eBay. 0 sales on Amazon, 20 items sold on eBay.
Really? Wow.
0. Maybe.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, sold nothing. So have I other platforms? I hate to say it, but I just don't like the Craigslist and stuff. I don't want to meet people. I don't want to see people. I don't want to talk to people. I'm not unsociable, but it's almost like with eBay, you don't see them, you don't talk to them. Right. They pay you. It's beautiful. They pay you, you ship it, you're done. Delete it. The only time right?
Yeah. Oh, I know. Like Larry and I. Okay, we could
tell.
So
the answer is really no.
Yes. So Larry, no, he doesn't. Although sometimes you do put something on Craigslist, and you're like, or somebody wants to pick something up locally that you have on. That's stressful.
We don't do it.
Yeah,
we just have a hard line. We just and we get calls a lot.
Yeah.
I'm in Denver. I'm in Aurora. Can I?
Yeah. No.
I just say sorry. We don't have a warehouse. We can't afford. We don't offer local pickup. But if you buy it today, I can ship it out today, and you'll probably get it tomorrow or the next day.
Right. Yeah. And some people say, can I save the $7 shipping if I meet you? If I'm making enough money on the product, I might say, you know what, I'll give you the $7 credit and still mail it.
Yeah. We don't. That's part of the price.
So last year. I shared this with you the other day. We sold maybe just over between 9 and 10,000 items.
Last year, about 10,000.
Okay, so last year we sold 10,000 items, and I loved it because not one of those is face to face. I am not a salesman. I've never sold one thing in my life, Larry. Seriously. And that's why I think I was addicted when you were like, hey, eBay, let's do this together. I'm getting some large items. We started off on Craigslist, and then you and I started doing the auctions. Yeah. And you're like, why don't you run this separate little account that I created in my name? And we were kind of splitting the proceeds. And I just thought it was so cool that I could sell something at 3 a.m. and not have to shake somebody's hand and explain the history of it.
You just had to get up in the morning and the next day and ship it.
Right. So, and you're the same way.
Yeah, like I tend to try to get items that sell themselves. I think that's the way I've been all my life. I'm not a salesman. I can't tell somebody to buy something. If they want to buy it, let them buy it. So most of the industries that I've been in all my life, and including now, these are items that sell themselves. So I don't really have to do much. I'll make you happy. Buy it, pay me, buy it, and if there's any issues, just let me know. And 90% of the time, it works out well.
Right.
So, we really want to get into we want to talk about how you prep and list your items, because let's go through your a little ritual of you go home and you got your little booty, as we call it. Hey, I got my four I got my 3 or 4 items I got today. What do you jump down on your desk?
Yeah, well, first thing I'll do is I'll make myself a nice Absolute martini.
Okay.
Turn my TV on, put on one of my shows. I just relax. I just love my office environment. I love it. And then I'll take the item and clean it up as best I can. I need a lot of improvement with my pictures. It's horrible. Most of my items will fit in a photo box, but my lighting is still poor. But clean it up, take a picture of the item, list it, and then store it. I mean, that's really what it is.
All right. But the key, so I just want to take time. Can you turn around and grab that thing with all the eBay stickers on it?
Okay.
Yes. This is our guest relations department put this together for you to open up. Okay.
Wow.
This
I'm afraid.
Yeah, you know what? Because you just spilled the beans on your listing practically.
Hold on, everybody. We'll do this together.
All right. So
right.
So that right there is the key to your listing success. Right? Are you a Tito's man?
Oh yeah. I love Tito's. Absolute Tito's. It's one or the other.
He said Absolute martini.
Oh, you said an Absolute martini.
I said Absolute, but that's just by default. Tito. I do buy Tito's often.
And why is that? I think it's because you're a reseller. And what is it about being a reseller that makes you want to like Tito's?
Why?
It's cheap. It's inexpensive.
It's a little. It's probably in line with. It's probably the same as Absolute. Maybe $2 more, depending. But thank you. I'm going to put this in my office.
You got it.
Too much.
You want to know where I got it? Yeah. Okay, but you know what? This you could hang it up in your office and make that face.
It's so funny.
Yeah. So Kelly, yum! I love Tito's. We know a lot of people. That love Tito's.
Oh yeah.
I'm on that bandwagon too. It's pretty.
You?
Yeah. If I have to drink vodka.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so funny.
It's so funny. Yeah. So I knew that was your secret. I knew you were going to say I make myself a martini and I dig in and I enjoy my night, because every time I'm texting you, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna enjoy my evening. And you know what? That's the thing. You love what you do.
Love it.
And you're not afraid to dig in and solder something. You're not.
No.
I find things that I'm like, sell it. I'm going to sell it as is, and you're like, no, give it to me. I'll bring it back next week. It'll be fixed.
Yeah.
So Kelly says that she's prepping shoes today. She goes, I hate doing that, but the shoes sell for me.
Yeah, but shoes are a really great seller for a lot of resellers.
You know what I ran into a couple of weeks ago, and Dave, I told you this. I thought it was fascinating. One of my friends sells like vintage stuff, antique stuff, and he doesn't do eBay. So he sent me over because he had something that I was interested in. So he sent me over to this place called the Brass. What's it? The Brass Armadillo.
Yes.
Where is that?
It's in
Sounds familiar.
By Wadsworth, Wheat Ridge. So what it is, this is very interesting. It's an enormous building, and there are others like it, but this just happens to be one that's here. It's an enormous building, probably the size of a Home Depot, and they had rows and rows and rows of glass sectional cases with locks on them. There had to be no less than 1,000, okay, plus floor space. And my friend rents this one thing for $75 a month. He puts all his items in there. He prices them, and that's it. He's done. There are employees there and everything. Somebody will walk by, will see the item. The employee will take it out. The employee will ring it up. The house gets, I think they get 10% of the fee. At the end of the month, he gets a check, and all he has to do is just replenish it. He said he gets anywhere from $100 to $1,000 a month, and that's all he does is go there every couple of weeks, just putting stuff in there.
So it's like on-site consignment.
Yeah, you couldn't even get parking. Exactly, you couldn't even get parking there. It was unreal, and it's only $75 a month is what he's paying for that.
Can you sell anything, or just
he sells video games on one shelf? Xbox games, video consoles and controllers, and then other stuff. He's got like a whole thing. I just thought the concept was cool. So it's another outlet. I'm sure most states will have something like that. It's just another way of moving merchandise.
Yes.
Interesting. I never heard of it.
Yeah,
but Kelly has.
Yeah, Kelly's local in Denver.
I couldn't even get parking. It was the coolest place.
And this is during the week or at weekend?
It was during the weekday, because there was a lot of older people there. These are a lot of the stuff is like collector stuff, like old vintage stuff. So there were like old people, even older than me. So they don't work; they're retired, And but it was crowded. It was really cool. I thought it was a fascinating concept, and just the way they did it. Yeah. Get for $75 a month, you can put anything. I mean, I walked around for an hour, and you can't cover that place in an hour. You'd have to spend a whole day there. Right. And different booths had different things.
Yeah. Next time I'll go with you. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I always heard about it, and you're right. I always heard about it from people that sell the vintage or unique collectibles. Which my brain can't comprehend. I just don't get it. Did you see anything that you liked there? Like anything?
Yeah, there were some, some fascinating, I want to say, plaques that was like way back from, I don't know, when there was segregation. It would be like, whites this way, blacks this way, and stuff like that. I mean, it was just stuff that was just like, part of history that you're like, that was left from that. And it was just that stuff was cool. There was a lot of old because the older the generations get, people start dying off, and that stuff doesn't become as much in demand as as it was. But
yeah, that's what Kelly just said. She goes, it's really fun to look around there.
Yeah.
She goes, I didn't really find much to resell, but for collecting, it's fun.
Yeah.
Collecting is a fancy word for a hoarder, but no, but we know Kelly. It's okay. But no, I agree. There's some cool stuff. Lori and I last year we drove to Florida, and on the way back we stopped in Canton, Texas. It's a flea market called First Monday Flea Market. It's once a month they have it, and I was all set.
Very large.
I was like, this is going to be great. We're going to get a lot of inventory, but it was all collectible stuff.
Yeah, it was all antique, vintage, some China stuff. If we were into that kind of thing, it would have been an awesome place to go to get stuff. But it was fun. It wasn't good for reselling, but it was fun to peruse.
Yeah. I mean, and another thing Larry says, and people that are in the room, do you ever feel like you're running out of ways to get inventory? Do you feel like that, or does it always like go in waves?
It's probably something that you'll always feel. You could never have enough inventory. I mean, I don't think, I guess I'm selective. I guess I could get stuff that I really don't want to deal with. But getting inventory is getting a product to resell in itself is just the hardest thing, and that's what business is. You buy something and then you sell it. You got to get it first to sell it. You have to have somebody that wants to buy it.
Yep.
Now I think you kind of spilled the beans, and I was like, you know what? I'm in your shoes right now as well, where you go to your spots and you walk around and you're like, you only gravitate to the things that you have sold. Correct. which means you have a database in your head right now of, what, I'm only sticking to what I know. And it's not like you're lazy. It's just like, I'm just going to cherry pick, as opposed to I'm going to crank away and look up more items and build that database up. I think that I fall into that trap as well. Are you starting to branch out?
I guess I'm more about when it comes to that, I'm more about quality than I am about quantity. As opposed to when we go out to eat, I'm more about quantity than I am about quality. Okay. You know that?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there are sometimes it's hard to say. Yeah, but I've got this database in my head over the last 10 years, and especially over my life about what name brands are, what name brands sell, what items sell. The stuff that I sell sometimes takes years to sell, but they do sell because they're just unique, specialized items. Mostly tools. And when the person, I never do auctions. I've learned that from way back, or especially with a one of a kind item or an item. If somebody wants it, they're going to pay for it. But you can never. Yeah, I mean, I remember we bought a couple pallets of Home Depot returns, Dave. I don't know how we got them.
We went to an auction where you could buy these pallets. It was a local place, and Larry and I were like, "Hey, there's some $40 items in there," but
oh my gosh, what a mess!
Did they not work out? They weren't good.
It was bad.
Well, it was all. It's what they call RTV. They're return to vendor. Okay, they're when somebody returns an item to Home Depot has a policy with all their vendors. Anybody that returns an item, the vendor has to take it back no matter what. If you want to be a vendor for Home Depot, this is the deal. So Home Depot really doesn't take the loss. So when they get these returns, they put these RTV stickers on them. Somehow they get into other hands and they sell the pallets of the return to vendors. 90% of it, and they were like, brand new boxes, water filters, and all kinds of stuff. Everything in there was the person put their old item in the new box. So they would buy the new item and put their old broken item in it and then return it. They're more. Home Depot has gotten better with that stuff now. They're more savvy to analyzing their products. But that's basically what most of it was. But you try. I don't regret trying. Right. We got some stuff out of it.
Yeah.
Live and learn.
No doubt. I sometimes I worry because I'm complacent at times where I source and how I source, and sometimes I feel like I should dabble. I should explore getting into shoes or sneakers or anything like that. But I just
we could. We really wanted to.
We could.
We certainly could. It just takes the same amount of time and effort that you put in already over the last 8 years to get to that point with something else, like to branch out. Mm-hmm. But it could very well be done.
Yeah, after doing it for so long, you just gravitate, like Dave said, towards the items that you're familiar with, and that's what you focus on. Like there are times where I'll look at shelves and I'll just scan like this, and I'm just looking for items that I'm familiar with, and then I go back and I'm like, I see something that I never saw before. I wasn't looking for it. It's like you have blinders on for certain things, and I'm like, holy moly, that thing is worth whatever. But it's
What was pretty funny, Larry, I think it was like 2 years ago, when I was at the bins, you came in, and I'm like, it's okay, come here, it's okay, I'll take care of you.
Wear a hazmat suit in there.
I know you could always tell the newbies or the people that don't want to be there, they're like, oh, their heads on a swivel. But we walked and we found a Bissell steamer green machine or something. It was parts and broken. And I'm like, and I said, oh, look, I could sell this nozzle for $30 and this and I took the parts, I kind of cannibalized it because it was incomplete. Like nobody was going to buy it. So I was able to take like 3 or 4 parts off, and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like we made something out of nothing. So, that's kind of being creative on my end. And I think you and I, like you always say, come on, let's get into a project together. Like you always want. And that's fun. There's no doubt about it. I think we call it, the bandwidth. Like I can't really devote too much time right now into getting into something new. And I think that's for all entrepreneurs, when they get in their niche, they stay in their niche.
And absolutely. Like if you're if you're afraid that if you don't go to the Goodwill bins, you might miss some grand slams. So why go do something else when you may have a missed opportunity? So it's hard to stay away from that,
Yeah.
So can you read it?
I
okay.
can't.
So Kelly just said she saw a post on a group where a buyer got their item in a Home Depot microwave box, and they took the return out. They took the return at the store. The seller just reused the box. That vendor is going to get a surprise, and that's what happens. Sometimes you get that type of
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans. Yeah, right. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I was a store detective for a department store in New Jersey for many years, and I've seen a lot of stuff that used to do the changing of the prices, the taking boxes and putting other stuff in the boxes, taping them up, and then just paying for what was in the box.
Is it a store that's no longer here?
Bradley's.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Bradley.
It was fun, but people just.
So Larry, I'm going to make a confession to the room. I'm going to tell them about the one college auction you and I would go to once a quarter.
That was actually. I still want to do that again.
Yes, we went up to
CSU.
CU.
Auction. CU Boulder,
and it was a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff. And what was really funny is it's all laid out ahead of time. You go there a day if you want to scout, but most people get there to Saturday early in the morning. And
let's tell them the items that they're selling is from the classrooms. They're like from the science departments and all that stuff, and it's all equipment that they're getting rid of and they're buying new equipment. So all their old equipment they'd auction off, and this is the auction we went to.
Just like obsolete stuff, and we would always. It was always funny because it's the competitive nature. Larry and I were a team, and like we'd see this guy's buying this, and you get caught up in that live auction where it was like they have the five, and you raise your hand and they call on you. It's like, oh my gosh, your stomach drops. It's like, do I really want it? It's the whatever buyer's remorse. Yes. But what was funny is Larry, we would have a kind of like a tag team thing where I would Larry sat in like a chair just like this with wheels, and I kind of pushed him around. I would like push him ahead. I'd be like, hey Larry, I'm gonna push you like one table ahead, and you just kind of like research this table and you plop yourself down there. Like nobody was gonna tell, hey, get out of that chair. It was like he had a bad back or something. He was just like, no. And he was front row, like in this chair, and he'd look at me and be like, he'd nod like, yes, yeah, and it was great. And we had some good times. We would drive home cracking up.
Oh, we made a lot of money at those things.
We were driving home with centrifuges and stuff. I remember you sold something to somebody in Germany. You're like, this is going to some crazy doctor. We had some fun times. And that was another thing we dabbled in, but a lot of that was long tail. Like, remember, that would take years. You probably still have some of that stuff.
Yes. If it works.
If it works, yeah.
If it works, still have that thing.
There was always this one. It was so competitive. There was this one guy. It's like you get in a bidding war, and like Larry's face when he wants to win something, he goes, and he's not going to lose. He's not going to lose. So it's like do, and it keeps on going up, and finally somebody drops out. And it was always this one guy. Like when Larry would win, the guy would come up and almost kind of validate, like, "Hey, you got something really good there. It's $1,600 if it works." And he would always say, if it works.
Oh, is that why he said that?
Yes. But he would always end in the disclaimer, if it works. So every time we went to the auction, it'd be like, oh, if it works is here, Larry. What are you going to do? So we had nicknames for everybody. It was so much fun.
But that's like, that's just, there's so many different ways of getting merchandise like that, like the storage thing, the auctions, the college auctions. I don't know how we found out about that. I think there was a site, auctions.com or something, that lists a lot of these auctions. I mean, the first time we did it, we made a lot of money. I mean, a real lot. And, then the years later, it kind of like, I guess the competition and stuff. But we stopped doing that. But I think that,
I think what happened was you and I, we made a lot of money because the last table in the auction was all obsolete lab equipment, and Larry, and we would gobble stuff up. This is when I had the minivan. We were gobbling things up for $5 a piece. Remember that? And you're like, "What is it?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I got it for $5." and then we would bring it home, and
then you would look at it.
Yeah, then we would kind of split it. Then we would look stuff up, but for $5 we'll take it.
The problem with live auctions is you kind of get caught up. It's like, if this guy bids $10 on it, then it's got to be worth 11. And then all of a sudden somebody bids 12. You're like, well, if he's bidding 12, then it's got to be worth 13. And before you know it, you're not even paying attention. I mean, there was some stuff that people were bidding like, are you crazy?
Yeah,
you know. One guy, it was funny. One guy, there's this old welding machine. I remember it must have weighed about 500 pounds. It was just disgusting. It was so rusted. The guy paid $500 for it. I'm like, are you crazy? He goes, do you know that the copper inside of here is worth $1,000? I never thought of that. Maybe he paid $200 for it. It was worth $500. Whatever it was. He said the copper inside is worth a fortune. It's like,
that's this.
Yeah, that's from doing it. He's done it before,
Right. I remember that. He was so into it, and we were like, "That is, you could have it."
Yeah.
Like, must have known something you didn't. Obviously, I would have been like, "He must know something we don't."
Yeah. But now going forward, now I know that, so I actually look for stuff like that. You learn from these people,
Yeah. We tried. I remember I actually sent in a bunch of circuit boards to a company that we found online. Like, you and I got all these circuit boards. Right. Because there's gold or silver or stuff like that, and they melt it down. Yeah. And I think it was like $15 to send it in, and we didn't make much. But if you have hundreds of them, it could be worthwhile. Yeah. But we wanted to.
No, go ahead.
No. We wanted to just kind of wrap this up because we're on an hour, and there's other YouTube.
Any more presents for me? Anything else for me?
You could have the boom box, but you have to give me $200 for it. Or you could have my little my T-ball trophy behind you from 1978.
Oh, I got my Tito's. That's all I care about.
Well, there you go. See, you hang that up tonight. You make yourself a nice drink.
You're going to see it in my office. Okay. next to my AC/DC signatures and my Eagle signatures and all that.
Very nice.
Okay,
well, thank you so much for being with us, Larry. It was so great to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
Always fun to talk to. We talk eBay all the time, so it's just another day for us.
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed it. If you have any questions, ask Dave and Laurie, and look forward to watching you guys next Monday for sure.
All right. Thanks again, Larry. We'll see you later.
Okay.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.